Now, obviously, before getting to this point, we had worked on so many opportunities. So I expect to see a couple of live deals announced this year for both real estate and agriculture. And those are the things that then, once we get those deals done, we'll invite other people as the pipeline builds very nicely. On agriculture, it's quite interesting. I think the focus for us is a good portfolio that has a significant weighting to export agriculture. And the reason is because, as you know, there's an embedded hedge in that type of structure. But at the same time, there's a significant need internally for staples. So there'll be a portfolio that matches and tries to balance that with significant export element of agricultural products. And these are the real cash crops that Nigeria needs to continue to export to drive foreign exchange income. Yeah. On the real estate side, it's also a mix of that, but mostly on the commercial side, where we expect to see a few more deals. Some of the deals I've been working on coming up to this actually get announced.
Well, I just want to ask, you just this is a takeoff point. Now, when you cruise in at a certain altitude, what's the total size of these deals you're looking at? $700 million, of course. The market you're talking about will almost sink that figure in. So you're looking at $5 billion, $3 billion, $8 billion total size of this vehicle.
No. So the real estate, this joint venture, the real estate, the equity size is targeted at $500 million. Obviously, some of the transactions will require debt, but this is $500 million of equity. $500 million of equity is quite sizable in itself. And obviously, some of the transactions, depending on how they're structured, 60 to 70% of them will be, in my opinion, brownfield assets, and 30 to 40% will be greenfield assets. So some of those will end up taking some element of debt as well. So that expands the size of it. But this is the size of this vehicle on the equity side is $500 million for real estate. For agriculture, it is $200 million. Now, obviously, as opportunities exist, and don't forget, I mean, the NSIA is not going to solve every problem in the country. We are going to solve some, and we're hoping that this creates a template for other investors to come into the country. And then I think at this stage in itself, it's not inconsequential. It's actually quite significant in our opinion.
Use this opportunity, Ms. Orji, to bring us up to speed the size of Nigeria's sovereign wealth fund. What much do we have in the portfolio? How we are doing as far as the current market is concerned, globally speaking? Give us a kind of a snapshot of our balance sheet as we speak right now, the one you're sitting on.
Sure. The contributions made so far by the Federation into the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority is $1.25 billion. Now, and that is split across the three funds that we manage: the Stabilization Fund, the Future Generations Fund, and the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund. And the ratio so far has been 20 to the Stabilization Fund, 40 to the Future Generations Fund, and 40 to the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund. Now, the NSIA also has third-party asset management relationships with the Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trader of $350 million that we manage on their behalf, as well as now a reduced amount from DMO from initially $200 million to $100 million. So altogether, the third-party assets are about $450 million, and the NSIA's own assets is $1.25 billion, so that gives you roughly $1.7 billion. Obviously, we have earned returns on them, and the returns obviously reinvested. And you've seen us declare our earnings in the last 3 years consistently. So in terms of the core capital contributed by the Federation into the NSIA is $1.25 billion, which is NSIA's own assets. And then we have $450 million of third-party assets that we manage.
Are you looking for new investment from the owners?
For the investment from the owners?
Yes.
Well, I was listening to your show earlier. You talked about what's happening to the energy prices, and I think we're going through a cyclical downturn on the energy prices, complicated by some elements of what's going on within the country. The truth is this, for the NSIA, and we've made this clear many times, the NSIA was set up for times like this where we have a cyclical downturn in oil prices, but we've seen many cycles, and I am still very optimistic that we'll see a recovery in the near future. In the meantime, There are other ways that the Federation can contribute to the NSIA and other parts of the constituent parts of the Federation, the states and the local governments, and as well as the federal government can contribute. There have been several sovereign wealth funds that have been set up through asset contribution, not cash. And so these are some of the conversations that we continue to explore as possibilities of growing the assets size of the NSIA. The reality about sovereign wealth funds, in my opinion, is I think people need to understand that these funds are set up for the long haul. The average investment that we make on the future generation side or the infrastructure side is about 20 years. And so I think, as we go through the cyclical period, people need to understand that this is exactly what this fund was set up for, to do as a hedge against these cycles. And so even if there isn't any fresh cash contribution in the short term, the NSIA is set up to continue to execute its strategy, which is to grow through these partnerships. What is the objective of the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund? One is to enhance the development of Nigeria's infrastructure. We have then gone on to define our strategy as actually setting up catalytic vehicles that bring in fresh capital into the country. And we're very, very pleased about the relationship that we've signed up with the Old Mutual Investment Group. And
I'm sorry to cut in here. I'm sorry to cut in here. We have about 1 minute. I need to ask you this question on the final note. The government is thinking, the federal government is thinking that some of the assets seized under the current corruption, anti-corruption program would need another agency to manage them. Would you want some of these assets that are domiciled in Nigeria, perhaps outside the country, to be managed by your agency, the NSIA, under what you call as asset contribution?
That's not a conversation that I can address here, but I think the NSIA has proven its capability in third-party asset management and also has proven its capability in being able to manage these things. Obviously, these conversations, and I will just probably end by saying we are very well able to manage whatever we're given to manage. At the end of the day, it's about adding value to the country.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Uche Oji, the Chief Executive Officer, Managing Director at the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. We're back in 2. Stick around.